Here in sunny Barcelona in November, there's just been a general election campaign for the whole of Spain. But if you look at the posters in the windows, they weren't of support for political parties or even for Catalonia or for Spain. They were declarations of support in a little yellow ribbon for the 9 people jailed collectively for almost 100 years by the Spanish courts for their part in the campaign for Catalan independence. Today on the Alex Salmond Show, we look at the human cost behind these sentences. We interview the prisoners' wives. We ask them if the struggle is worthwhile and what hopes they have to see both their husbands and Catalonia free.
If the frequency of elections is a sign of political breakdown, then the UK and Spain are competing for the title of the sick man of Europe. The UK is entering its 3rd election in just over 4 years, while Spain has just finished its 4th in 4 years. The Socialists emerged once again as the largest party, but it looks as if the political deadlock which has afflicted Spain is set to continue, with Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez still finding it difficult to put together a stable majority in the Cortes. In addition, the far-right party, Vox, emerged as the big gainers across Spain. This Spanish election was dominated by the political crisis in Catalonia, with the Madrid parties vying with each other on the campaign trail as to which one could be toughest with their troublesome northeast province. In Catalonia, in contrast, the independent supporting parties strengthened their position with opinion energised by the punitive sentences handed out by the Spanish Supreme Court to independence leaders last month. 9 people were found guilty, not of violence, but of sedition in the organisation of the independence referendum of 2017 and the demonstrations designed to defend that political process. Collectively, they were sentenced to almost 100 years, a level of sentence which shocked liberal opinion across the world. We therefore start a 3-part series on Wither Catalonia. Today, we look at the human cost of the draconian sentences. In the second programme, we examine how the political struggle is likely to develop in the aftermath of the Spanish election. Finally, we interview some of the key grassroots campaigners in the rebel nation and ask international opinion how the crisis should be addressed and resolved. In this programme, however, we look at the impact of the sentences on the families involved. We talk to 2 of the spouses whose partners have been condemned to long terms of imprisonment. We speak to Laura Masvidal, wife of the former Catalan Interior Minister Quim Forn, and to Chel Bonnet, wife of Jordi Cuixart, former head of the cultural organisation Òmnium.
Spain, I think they have made a terrible mistake attacking peaceful voters, and the world saw it.
If these people never put my husband in jail, maybe the people in Scotland, the people in all the Europe, never listen about his fight.
But first, your reaction to last week's show on the achievement of Lucy's Law, the legislation that bans the third-party sale of puppies. Maureen says, can anyone have a discussion about the welfare and overbreeding of greyhounds, as they are always overlooked? Please bring this up, Alex. We'll look at that, Maureen, of course. Bob says, how about a law to ensure all cats in Scotland are neutered to help the endangered wildcat species from becoming extinct or crossbred? Bill says, superb, raising the awareness which is driven by unscrupulous battery farmers and the sheer ignorance of the public. Thanks, folks. And finally, Patricia, who says, part of the reason there's an explosion in puppy farms is a ridiculous hike in prices by kennel club breeders, sometimes charging over £1,000 for the current trendy dogs. These puppy farms are cashing in on this by selling pedigree pups a lot cheaper. No matter how often people are told they think they're getting a bargain and end up with a sick pup that costs them a fortune in vet fees. Now back to Alex in Barcelona, speaking first to Laura Masvidal.
Now, Laura, your husband, Joaquim Forn, was the Interior Minister in the Catalonian government of 2017, now been sentenced to 10.5 years imprisonment for sedition. Initially, Joaquim was involved in local politics. He rose to become the deputy mayor of this great city of Barcelona. But that must have occupied a lot of time, the local politics. So that's inevitable in a political marriage, isn't it?
Yes, He always dreamed to be a mayor of Barcelona, but life changed our plans.
Were you involved in politics as well? Were you campaigning with your husband? Were you delivering leaflets?
I have to do now. I have to do now. But before, no. I have my life, my work, and I always help him and support him, but not with my commitment.
Let's go back to 2017. And Joachim was asked by then President Puigdemont to come into central government from being the deputy mayor of Barcelona and brought in as Minister of the Interior because of his experience in dealing with the police service in Catalonia. But that was at a time of great change and tumult with the preparations for this independence vote. Tell me a bit about that time and what it was like and how excited Joachim would be to be part of that administration.
Form part of the government trying to give a response of a big demand to organize a referendum. It was an important moment for his life.
And when that day came, the 1st of October 2017, it must have been a day of very conflicting emotions in Catalonia. On the one hand, there was this great expression of a democratic ballot. On the other hand, there was the violence by the Spanish state police, which everyone saw internationally on the television screen. So on the one hand, there's this huge democratic expression. On the other hand, there's these scenes of violence. What was it like experiencing that day in Catalonia?
I remember we are very excited about 1st of October. We want to vote, we want to express, and we feel that we, at the end, could express. But Spain, I think they have made a terrible mistake attacking peaceful voters, and the world saw it.
And then the Spanish government started to arrest, through their judicial system, the ministers and those who were seen to be organising who had organised the referendum. President Puigdemont went into exile in Brussels initially and other countries. Did Joachim ever think, with these arrests taking place, it was time to get out of Catalonia quick before? Why did he stay to face the music?
He feels innocent. He wants to explain what they have done. He didn't expect Spain to be so hard and unfair.
And then the expressions of support for Joachim and the other people arrested. I mean, you're wearing the bow, which we famously, I think, many people who watch Premier football in England see it on the lapel of the Manchester City manager, of course. And you have a picture of Joachim as well on your lapel.
Yeah.
How does it feel when you see these expressions of support internationally? Does this give great encouragement to Joachim and the others?
Of course. I love Catalan people, their solidarity. Joachim knows that their cause is not a personal cause. That's why he maintains his ideas intact, his determination, and he maintains the illusion for the future because he knows that the cause is a collective cause.
And when you witnessed Joachim being found guilty by the Spanish courts and then sentenced to 10.5 years, that must have come as a thunderbolt. I mean, it was greeted with astonishment internationally, but how did you feel about it? 10.5 years of a sentence.
It's a difficult moment. It's a very hard sentence. It's a mixture of feelings. Sometimes I feel sad. Sometimes I feel angry. But at the end, we want to maintain our illusion and our dreams and our hopes and do it. So in that sense and many others, we won't surrender.
How difficult it is to talk about things. And
Yeah.
does he ever say, you know, Laura, was all this worth it? What's happened to us?
He knows that period of his life has finished. He knows it, but he's already thinking about his future. His immediate future is jail, but work for a better world, work for your country. You can do it through many or several ways, through culture, business, or with a strong and personal commitment with society. And that's what he wants to do.
And does he have any regrets?
I don't know. I saw him strong. I saw him with hope. We believe in peaceful activism to pressure and change things and perhaps to pressure governments for amnesty. Let's see.
Do you see the contrast, and how do you explain it perhaps, between on the one hand the great expressions of public support, the grassroots across many countries for the predicament of Joachim and the others, and on the other hand the reluctance of other governments to interfere in the internal affairs of Spain? How do you explain that?
I don't know. For the moment, we have already seen several ways to judge. European justice is different than Spain justice.
This is because the German government and others, the Scottish judicial system, refused to extradite people to Spain.
Exactly. They don't see a crime where there is not a crime.
Now, Laura, you've spoken to us about how Joachim feels about things. How about you? What's your feeling about things?
At the end, I am a political prisoner wife. But he always asks me to use this interview or others for a demand to Europe and to those who think that to believe in democracy, they can't not be blind and silent in front of this attack to fundamental rights and freedoms and liberties.
You've articulated that so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Nice.
Welcome back. Alex is in Barcelona, examining the human cost behind the punitive jail sentences handed out last month to 9 Catalans who had a role in the Catalonian referendum of 2017. He now speaks to Txell Bonnet, whose husband Jordi Cuixart led the cultural organisation Òmnium.
I'm now joined by Txell Bonnet, the wife of Jordi Cuixart, one of the 9 people imprisoned draconianly by the Spanish courts for long sentences for their participation in the independence movement in Catalonia. Welcome to the show, Txell.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Txell, tell me a bit about when you and Jordi met. I mean, were you both activists in the national movement, or was the politics quite separate from your relationship?
In fact, my husband, he's the president of the most important cultural association in Catalonia that has almost 200,000 members. And at the moment that we met, I'm also a journalist, and I was working in some literary and cultural events, and I was the MC of one of these events. And then always we met at the beginning in this atmosphere, you know, in the cultural atmosphere.
Jordi was tried because of his presence in demonstrations which were trying to prevent the Spanish state police seizing the organizational infrastructure of the referendum in 2017. But that was a political demonstration, wasn't it? That was a mobilization of people to prevent the ballot boxes or the organization or the administration of the referendum. It was very political, wasn't it?
It's not a question of the independence of Catalonia, because, for example, in Scotland, you could choose with the yes or between yes or no. And here in Catalonia, it should be the same. I mean that the thing that he was asking, it was for the possibility of a referendum, but you have the freedom to choose yes or not. And then it's something very basic, it's fundamental rights, is the possibility that you could be in a demonstration using the freedom of speech and saying, okay, I'm for the autodetermination, I'm for the independence, and this is not a crime.
Tell me a bit about that day, the 1st of October 2017, when on the one hand you had this huge turnout of people supporting Catalan independence, expectant, exuberant, joyous, and on the other hand you had the violence which people around the world saw on their television screens of the state police stopping people voting, people getting pushed downstairs, hit with clubs. That must have been a day of very conflicting emotions.
Yes, and it's very sad to arrive to this point, the point that you are seeing people watching in the TV, people voting, and some policemen beating these people. This is an horrible image that I think that the European community must do something. I mean that even if you don't recognize the result of a referendum because you don't like in the Spanish government, they don't want a referendum as in United Kingdom is possible, but not here. But you should never beat the people. I mean, you could not recognize the result, but don't use the force of the police, the violence. What is going to happen? These 2,003,000 people that vote for the referendum, these 2,300,000 people that vote for the referendum, they should disappear because they don't like what they want. Or we should give some answer to these people, some solutions.
Then, of course, there was the political decision to make a declaration of independence. Then there was a bit of political toing and froing, and then your husband was arrested. Tell me what it was like when you realised that Jordi was going to be subject to arrest and whisked away to Madrid. Tell us a bit about your emotions then.
I was watching the television. It was almost 10 p.m. I was watching the television with my baby, and I listened that Jordi Sánchez and Jordi Cuixart were arrested in pretrial detention. And then the noise of the casseroles in all the neighborhood became to sound blah blah as a protest, you know.
So they were beating support for your Jordi.
A lot of noise, and from the first second, I understand that the people are going to give us a lot of support. And even it seems an horrible situation that your husband is arrested, you have a very little baby, and this prison maybe it's going to be for a long. I never feel really sad and depressed. And every day we feel stronger because we realize that a lot of people is in our side, and I don't like to speak one side to another side because I prefer to be all in the same boat.
But buoyed by the demonstrations of support, obviously, but for your family, a personal tragedy. I mean, your husband, you have, I think, two young babies.
Yes.
And your husband incarcerated first in Spain and then back to Catalonia. That must have been a horrendous thing, despite the demonstrations of solidarity and support. It's still your family who are being separated.
The hardest thing in this period has been the time that the prisoners were in Madrid, because they are far from Madrid, in a penitentiary far from Madrid, and for the visits that is only twice per month, you should travel 600 kilometers and then come back. It means 1,200 kilometers every time that you visit him, only for 2 hours. And then this gives you, the travels are very disgusting, you know? And this is the worst part. But we are proud of him. I mean that even if we are growing, the babies are growing separately from his father, we feel proud of him, and I don't know why this thing gives you a kind of equilibrium with the bad situation. We decided to have another baby when he was in jail, and for us was a victory. At the beginning you think, okay, they are crazy, why they want to have another baby in this situation? But we are not so young, and maybe if we wait for the end of the prison, it couldn't be possible to have another baby. And then all the things that are in your hands, you should do it. Because if you don't still constructing your family, it means that they have win and they have stopped completely your life. You only can work in the present, you know. I don't know which day my husband will be in freedom, but I know that if I work every day for this freedom, the freedom will arrive sooner than if I don't do anything. This is what we are doing.
And then we came to October 2019.
Yes.
And Jordi and the others were sentenced, 9 people collectively, to almost 100 years in
Yes.
prison. 9 years in Jordi's case. So how did that moment when you realised that he wasn't just going to be found guilty of sedition, but a sentence which was shocked people internationally in terms of its severity?
It's very hard. It's 9 years or 13 years, and we couldn't permit it. We should fight for stop this injustice, this unfair play. I couldn't look to the future like, oh, it's horrible, it's 9 years of prison. I should work every day. I mean that we should speak to the international community and try to stop this big injustice. It's a question of fundamental rights.
And how Jordi, back obviously in Catalonia now, but still in prison, we're looking at a long sentence to come. How does Jordi feel about the situation? How does he feel? Is he hopeful that pressure will see his release? Is he hopeful about the political prospects in Catalonia? How does Jordi reacting to this long sentence?
He is a very strong guy, and he said always that the prison has helped him give to him a kind of loudspeaker. If these people never put my husband in jail, maybe the people in Scotland, the people in all the Europe, never listen about his fight. But even if it's very sad and he's paying a very hard price, a personal price, a sacrifice because he couldn't be with the family and in a freedom life, he has had, thanks to the prison, a kind of loudspeaker for talk about the situation in Catalonia. It's sad, but he's using this repression to accuse the government with all the vulnerations of the fundamental rights of the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, and the way that they criminalize the participation and the right to vote in an election.
You've had a lot of support,
Yes.
Chel, from the people, and you've travelled yourself with the other wives and partners to other parliaments to mobilise that support. There's been very little support from European governments or the institutions of the European Union. How disappointing has that been, the lack of official governmental support for the Catalonian struggle in general, but the plight of your husband and others in particular?
In the case of Catalonia and Spain, it's very difficult because Spain has a lot of debt, and the economics in Spain are very weak and very dangerous. And Spain without Catalonia is a dangerous problem from the European community. And then I think that in Europe, it's very sad to say it, but they don't speak about the Catalan problem, because even if the fundamental rights have been violated, they are more worried about the money and what is going to happen if there's a crisis between Catalonia and Spain. They say that this is a domestic issue from Spain, but it's a domestic issue from the European Union.
Chel, let me ask you a personal question, a very personal question. Your babies are very young, too young to understand the politics, what's happened to their dad. but you must have thought about what you're going to say to them when they're old enough to understand. How are you going to explain to your babies why their father's in prison?
They are very young because one is 40 days old and the other, even if he is very young, he's 2 years and a half. But he is asking, when we are in jail, he is saying every time, Papa, you don't come with us? And we say, today no, but one day it will arrive that Father comes with us. We are not giving to our children an education that they should have an enemy. What we will say to our children when they are older is that maybe his father wasn't at home in their side, but he was fighting for a collective right that also is a right for them. And I hope that they understand this, that the father is not at his side, at their side every day, but he was fighting for a collective thing also for them.
I'm sure they will. Now, we have a tradition in Scotland, you probably have it in Catalonia as well, that your new baby, you toast the baby.
Yes.
And this is a quaich, and how you toast the baby with a quaich is you put whiskey, only Scotch whiskey in the quaich.
For sure, only Scotch whiskey.
And then you pass it around all the people of Catalonia to have a drink.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chel. Thank you so much.
The draconian sentences of the Spanish Supreme Court shocked liberal opinion across the world and outraged independent sentiment in Catalonia. Very few countries in the civilised world pursue sedition as a concept unless it is linked in some way to violence, and history teaches us that this sort of repressive tactic is seldom successful. Today's show, however, has been about the human cost upon two families of these long sentences and focused on two women who have picked up the mantle of speaking out in favour of their imprisoned husbands. There is little in the Spanish election results which offer the hope of initiatives to break the deadlock. The irresistible force of Catalan nationalism is still up against the immovable object of the Spanish state. Opinion is hardening on both sides and prospects of a post-election breakthrough seem as elusive as ever. One can only hope that now that this meaningless election is over, then meaningful talks can begin. Alex will continue his reports from Catalonia over the coming weeks. But meanwhile, join us next time when we move back to our celebrated panel of political pundits. Their forecasts at the start of the campaign generated over 400,000 views on Alex's Facebook alone. Next week, we ask them how the campaign's going, who's up and who's down, and whether there's still all to play for in this Christmas election. But until then, it's goodbye from all of us at the show, and we hope to see you next week.